All right. Like I said, my name is Isaac Arredondo. I'm a freshman at Miami University, and the presentation that I will be giving you guys today actually was a midterm project for one of my classes, and it outlines the process that I had of creating a new product and expanding that into a sort of business. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. And let's begin. Can everyone see it all right? Cool. So this is my presentation. I call it Learning Fantasy Languages Aurebesh, and we'll get into that later. So it began with, this is the table of contents of what the presentation is going to be. Starts with the problems, possibilities, going to the prototypes of the product, the finalization of it, and then future plans for this product. So I began with thinking about problems or struggles that I have or know people like who are close to me have, and thinking about how I could solve them. So just for the first few, my grandpa is blind, so I was thinking of different ways of how I could possibly fix that. Deafness, my grandma's deaf, learning different languages, because my dad has always stressed the importance of that. And I'm a big advocate for environmental issues and stuff. So thinking about how any of these could be solved. So the next step was funneling which ones I think I could solve, and then finding out how I could do that. So with like the blindness portion of it, I was thinking, how can we take the technology that they use for cochlear implants, but using that in a way to help sight instead? So that's just one example of that. But I settled on learning another language and how to do that. So this is the possibility that I came up with. I'm a huge fan of Star Wars and everything sci-fi. And sometimes when I watch the shows or read the comics, this language pops up and I don't know how to read it. And plenty of other people don't know how to read it. So I was wondering, what can I do to help the general public learn how to read this language so that they can explore the universe a little bit more? So my idea that I came up with was creating a workbook that would help the general population learn and how to read this language called Aurebesh. And the way that I wanted to model it was after the books that I used when I was learning to read and write English itself. And then, for example, I put cursive pages that I used for just an example to show. So a little bit about the details is, again, just going over the problem and the proposition, but I also got into the business side of it. Nothing like this exists for fantasy or sci-fi languages. And I did a little bit of research, and 50% of the adult population claims that they're fans of Star Wars. So there's a huge market for this product itself. And if we were able to put it in stores and make it openly available, it'll give it a little bit more exposure and more people would be likely to buy it since it's already right in front of them, instead of them having to go and search for it itself. And then I also went into the price a little bit. The average cost of printing a page is 5 to 8 cents. And if you do 65 pages, it only comes out to about $4.55. If you price it similarly to the books that I grew up with, it would be around $12, which ensures a 50% profit just for the printing itself. I didn't really get into the shipping and distribution portion of it. So these are this is the first prototype that I created of it. So it's a sample page, and the idea is that the symbol that correlates to the alphabetical letter is right there on the page. And all it is that whoever's using the book would just repeat the symbol for that line. And so I went to the benefits and I saw that it teaches people how to write the letters. The repetition of it builds the memory, and it connects the English language to the Aurebesh, because every English letter has an equivalent in that language. The drawbacks to it, it's a little bit bland, it's a little bit boring, and if you just do one line, it's not enough to have that stick into your memory. So to improve on the next one, I was thinking, how could I make this more fun for the person using the book? That's when I just decided to leave the symbols blank. And the idea with that is whoever's using the book could also color in the symbols for color association. So this is the same benefits as last time, except now there's color association. The drawbacks is that it's still a little bit bland. The one line still isn't enough for repetitions. So when thinking about how to make it better, how could I include more repetitions, or how could I put more practice into there? So then comes the final product. Here on the left side is the cover of the book, and on the right is the opening page. At the bottom, you can see the learning fantasy languages Aurebesh. The bottom of the left, it says Isaac Arredondo in the corresponding letters. So it's an attractive cover, intrigues people who are seeing it, and it gives you the sense of what is inside this book. The opening page just explains a little bit about the language, why I decided to write this book, and just it says, I hope you enjoy. So then into the book itself, it opens and there's a guide. So whoever's having the book can see how each letter relates to, how each English letter relates to each Aurebesh letter, and then goes into how each English symbol relates to an Aurebesh symbol. Now here are the 3 different practice pages that I came up with. So over on the left, the V1, this is just the same idea where you're writing the letter in. So the first step is coloring. So it has half the page would be the symbols that you just color in. Underneath that, on the second half of the page would be drawing the letter. I just shortened it up to save my wrist a little bit, but you can see I have the idea that for A and B. The second page is translating. So once you see all the symbols, you learn how to write them. Now it's learning how to read them. So you see them. So the first one is my name again in Aurebesh, and I at the bottom put it's my name. So it's the answers at the bottom. And then the last one is writing. So it gives you an English word. For example, I have envelope on the top, and it would be asking the person with the book to write envelope in Aurebesh at the bottom, which you can see I've done there. Now, planning ahead, this is a huge idea, but it starts small. So I wanted to start with this book itself. If I were to create this book and it would sell out, I know that there are audiences for other fantasy languages. For example, in the Game of Thrones, it had an average viewership of 44.2 million people through all seasons. And there's 2 languages that have been completely translated that you could make a book for this, and that's Dothraki and Valyrian. And then one of the most popular sci-fi languages, Klingon, is from Star Trek, and over 30 million people have seen the shows. So I was thinking, how could we also make that into a book? And that's the sources of my research, and that's really all I had. So are there any questions or anything?
I have a question. How did you yourself decode everything from the Star Wars movies? Did you pause it, take a snapshot of it, and study it, and look at what happened next and guess or something?
So you're asking the translation. How do I know the translations?
Yes.
So over the years, people have done the research, and just I know that the language has already been translated. So I just looked for it online, but there hasn't been a resource that puts it into this and practices it like the book does.
And how are you sure those sources are correct? They might be false sources. So you do a bit of research yourself on that after you?
Yes, I've done the research and I've done the practice as well. So while watching the shows, while watching the movies itself, I've taken notes. So
that must be painful. I know watching Star Wars is amazing, but having to go down onto your pen, that's painful sometimes when you just want to enjoy the movie.
For me, it's a lot of fun. It's something that I've always wanted to learn. So it was a joy to finally sit down and do this.
Isaac, I have a question for you. This is fascinating and so cool. And if you were to, when you talk about turning it into a book, are you thinking of, in terms of something hard or virtual, or what sort of a format would it take when you think about the huge audience that you could be reaching?
I was thinking like a paper book that would be distributed, because when I grew up in like first and second grade, when learning how to write like the English letters in cursive, it was those practice pages that have you write the letter over and over. And I was thinking of creating that, but for these different languages.
Oh my gosh, that's so much fun. That is great. That is great. And when you go through this process and you talk about how much fun it is to document it, like for you, like from an innovation perspective, like I love the list you had at the beginning in terms of the identification of what are the problems and the opportunities to be solved. I'm just curious, as an, you know, from an innovator perspective, like you must be coming up with those all the time.
Surprisingly, this was like the first time I really sat down and had a brainstorming session of different things that I could solve.
That's fantastic. Well, and I guess it's about, you begin somewhere, and that's a
Mhm.
pretty comprehensive list that you've got. So for me, you are a fresh reminder that we just begin by beginning. And it really is that, you know, just to stop and think through what are the problems that are out there that I see in the lives of people around me, and then how can I start to ideate to solve them. So very cool. That's great.
So Isaac, have you shared this with friends, and what was their reaction?
Actually, so right now I'm living on campus at school, and I was working in one of the study rooms that we have. And one of my friends who absolutely hates Star Wars and everything came in and saw me like practicing typing and writing it in this different language. And she was taken aback, and she was actually very interested in learning herself on how to do it. So it's been a big hit within my hall so far.
Great, great.
That was an excellent idea and an excellent presentation. At least it was better than cursive, which it's kind of torture to practice. But this notebook, when it comes out, trust me, you should tell me, and I will literally buy it. It was an amazing idea.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Good
look
luck.
forward to your books coming out as well.